How do you find epic campsites? And what's the difference between dispersed camping and camping in a developed area? And then also, do I get to use a toilet or do I have to go pee in that bush over there? That's everything that we're gonna cover today, so let's do this. I'm back! Hi everyone, I'm Nikki Corinne and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be talking about the different kinds of campsites and where to locate an epic one for your next camping adventure. So let's do this. This video is mostly going to focus on campgrounds and campsites within the US because that's where I'm living and that's what I know. Talk about dispersed camping first. Dispersed camping tends to refer to camping on public land that is outside of a developed campground. You can typically find dispersed camping within national forests or land that is managed by the Bureau of Land Management, also known as BLM land. About 90% of BLM land resides within the western states. Like everything in life, there's pros and cons and just things to note about dispersed camping. These sites are mostly free. They typically don't have any facilities such as bear boxes, water, bathrooms, kind of these basic amenities. You have to bring everything in with you and come prepared for that. Some obvious perks about dispersed camping is that it's remote. You're not gonna find a lot of people. There's also some etiquette around that, where if you do see someone that is dispersed camping and has their own kind of little corner, you kind of wanna respect that and find your own little corner because it will just be good for both of you. Another perk is that it is free. You can stay for up to 14 days. Just some things to note. These may be pros or cons depending on what your style and preference is. There's no trash service. So everything that you bring in, you have to keep track of and make sure you pack out. Another thing to note is that the land tends to be without cell phone reception. So you just wanna make sure to plan ahead. You're prepared in case of an emergency, have your maps pre-downloaded. Also, dispersed camping is first come, first serve because there is no reservation system. And so you really just wanna make sure that you have a couple backup plans just in case you go to a spot thinking that you're going to snag an epic location and then realize that every little camping area is all spoken for. Because these areas tend to be more remote, you will typically have to go off-roading at least a little bit. So depending on what kind of car you have, you might want to plan ahead to see if your vehicle can clear the off-roading part of it. Now, what are developed campgrounds? Developed campgrounds are the traditional kind of way of camping, where there's typically a pit toilet or some kind of bathroom, which usually smell horrible, by the way, but usually some kind of bathroom. There's also typically a faucet. You will have to pay for these campsites, which can range from like $5 to anywhere to like $100, depending on where you're staying and for how many nights. Developed campgrounds can be public or privately owned. Some perks of developed campgrounds include much easier to access. Typically you're going on paved roads. You can go right up to your campsite in a lot of places. Tend to have toilets or at least pit toilets. Some, depending on how fancy they are, will have actual showers, an area to wash your dishes, some kind of bench for you to set up kind of food and cooking stuff. Another perk about developed campgrounds is that they tend to have some kind of garbage disposal or somewhere where you're supposed to put your waste. Depending on the campsite itself, there may be a camp host. So if you do need something urgently, then you can kind of communicate with them. If it's a smaller campsite or more remote campsite, then they may just have rangers that kind of patrol that area maybe once or twice. Also, a comment on privately owned campsites. These tend to be nicer campsites in general because they are making money hosting you. So they tend to have nicer facilities, they may have showers. The nicest campsites that I've ever stayed at have been privately owned. I typically won't really seek those out, but occasionally, if I really want to camp in a certain area, but there's no public camping, there may be private camping. Some cons to camping in a developed campground include the price for however many nights could get pretty pricey. But another con includes noise and the likelihood of you being around a lot of people. For me personally, when I go camping, I tend to want to be in silence unless it's like my friends talking, and I just want to kind of reconnect, take that time, nature therapy, just be immersed in it, hear the weird noises, not human noises though, but hear the weird noises and just be fine with nature, you know? With developed campgrounds, they tend to put everyone really close together. So you look to your right and there's a tent, and then you look to your left, there's a tent. There's other people, there's other people. Depending on your style of wilderness and wanting to reconnect with nature, that may be just really awful for you. But some people may like it. Another consideration for whether you want to camp at a dispersed campsite or a developed campsite also includes what kind of camping you're going to be engaging in. Do you have a ground tent that you're going to set up, or do you have a rooftop tent like myself? Because I have a rooftop tent, not every developed campground is going to be conducive for me camping there. For example, if you're driving up to a paved campsite, but then they'll put up a barrier between your parking spot and then your campsite. And so for those of us that have rooftop tents, it's not as easy to just put down the ladder and then just camp there because there's this divider in the way. I always look ahead at where I'm planning on staying and actually the specific campsite number to see if it is conducive with my rooftop tent or not. So how do I find awesome campsites? That's like the biggest question I get asked, is like, how do you find these great sites? A lot of time and effort gets put into these searches, but I'm gonna simplify that for you. I tend to find these campsites through a variety of different ways that are app-based and then also website-based, and then also word of mouth. And fun fact, if you are within a national forest, you should definitely utilize the park rangers. I've gotten some great tips on the best camping among Forest Service roads from park rangers. So if you're able to stop by the ranger station on your way to camping, make friends with your local Forest Service people because they can give you awesome tips and recommendations on where to stay for free. Two apps that I commonly use in order to find campsites include the Dyrt, D-Y-R-T, and the FreeRoam app. In addition to those, I also use Google Maps satellite view in order to kind of zoom in. And you'll be able to see informal kind of campsites, and you just want to make sure to stay within those. Also within Google Maps, you can find the national forests by looking at the dark green sections. This isn't always the case, but that's typically how you can find the national forest. You can kind of just explore your options, just like a random hair flying. And a lot of the time, if I'm looking for public developed campsites, I'll go directly to Recreation.gov. This has been just a general overview, but let me know what kind of campsites you prefer and whether you have any questions in the comments. All right, it's been fun.